Hear me? All right. What Ben was politely trying to say was that I wasn't his first choice today, so I'm really sorry about that. I was a very close second. No, in all seriousness, I'm a massive fan of Ben's and what he's achieved with this event. It's a subject matter I'm very passionate about, and I'm really delighted to be talking to you this morning. I promise I won't take long, because the whole point in this morning is to hear from people who've been there and done it and are in the trenches, and I won't claim to be doing either of those. So to introduce myself, Rory Stirling, I'm a partner at MMC Ventures. We're consistently listed as one of the most active investors in the UK, and we do everything between seed and growth capital. So we see a lot across our portfolio and across the market. We've got some awesome speakers later, which I'll be back for. So if I run away after this, it's because I've got to go to a board meeting, but I will be back, Ben, I promise. So Ben said that I would talk about some of our experiences, which I absolutely will. I think he gave me the rather grand title today of keynote. So grand that I had to look up the definition and work out what it was I had to do to kind of justify that. And I came up with this. A talk to establish the main underlying theme, establishes the framework for the following program of events. So seems quite straightforward. I've got to establish a theme and a framework for the rest of the day. So I'm basically teeing you guys up and the rest of the speakers so that you're talking in the same language and you're on the same page. Before we do that, let's clarify what this is not. So Ben was very clear on the subject matter today. This is not about how to raise money. This is not about venture capital, although, believe me, I could bore you about that for hours. It's not about how to pitch. It's not about any one company or team or how they've done it. And it's not a place for advisors or consultants. This is supposed to be a practical day where you hear anecdotes and experiences from your peer group. So what is it? Is this? Ben uses the language execution focused. I couldn't agree more with the word execution. We heard from a number of speakers yesterday, and it's very clear that ideas are easy. I know that we could debate that. Ideas are easy, execution is everything. So I'm really glad to see the event that Ben's put together is really focused on that. So it's to hear from your peer group, practical advice on how to overcome those hurdles to growth. So I'm going to set the scene, and then Ben did ask me, as part of this, to give you some of the things that we see across our portfolio and across other businesses, which I'm very happy to do in terms of what we think drives success. So the title of the event is Scaling Startups. This isn't yesterday, which was about the first million, so why do we still have startups in the title? Quick straw poll. Who here works or thinks they work at a startup? Okay, I'm glad about it. Who doesn't think they work at a startup? I'd love to see if I can challenge that. So let's get one thing straight. We are not here today to talk about the narrow definition of startup. This is not what your mum thinks of a startup. This is not what your investment banking friends think of startups. Startups are not new, small versions of larger companies. They're not all based in garages. They're not all unfunded. They're not all poor starters. They're not lesser alternatives to investment banking or consulting. Startup. It is not the beginning of the journey for all new businesses. I repeat, it is not the beginning of the journey for all new businesses. That statement is untrue for two reasons. Not all new businesses are startups, and not all startups are at their beginning. Wikipedia even knows this to be true. This is clearly where Ben got his title, by the way. A startup is a company designed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. I like it, Ben. Well done. That doesn't say anything about the amount of time you've been going or the size of the business. And it's also, let's be clear, not a description that most businesses in the UK, when they start, are familiar with. If you take newsagents, plumbers, hairdressers, restaurants, solicitors, the list goes on. Even the taxi that brought me here this morning, when I was talking to him about what I did, he associated with Dragon's Den. When you talk to other people about what you do, most of them don't get it. That's because the majority of people, when they start a business, are doing it to create an income for the founder. It's a lifestyle business. It's about more flexibility, spending time with family. Whereas Jamie. Jamie, come on, put your hand up. He's in here somewhere. So we backed Jamie last week. You're spending more or less time with your family now than you did when you were in professional services?
Well, I was in M&A before, so...
Okay, fair. But those lifestyle things are not are unrecognizable to the people in this room, and I think we all need to agree that spending less time with your friends and family is not something to be proud of in isolation, but we're all in this room because we think doing something difficult is the only thing worth doing. And that may strike you as obvious, but that's because you're entrepreneurs and it's hardwired into you. Make no mistake about it, you are different to everyone else for that very reason. So Wikipedia is good, but I think Paul Graham is better. He has an infamous post called Startup Equals Growth. If you haven't read it, I would very much encourage you to read it and read everything else he's ever written. It is an absolute masterclass for anyone who's a founder entrepreneur. He goes on to say, a startup is a company designed to grow fast. The only essential thing is growth, and everything else we associate with startups follows from growth. The other one piece that I really like about his post is that he says you can use growth like a compass to make almost every decision you face. The reason I'm highlighting those points is because when I talk about some of my observations later, very briefly, they may seem incredibly narrowly focused and single-minded, and I think it's helpful when we define exactly what a startup is designed to do and what ultimately, when you get your head above the day-to-day detail and crap that you have to deal with, that ultimately that a startup is designed to grow fast. If you needed any reminding or reinforcing that a startup is not about the amount of time they've been going or early stage, then make no mistake, we are in a new generation of billion-dollar startups. Not all startups are billion-dollar companies, but if you take the headlines from last week, Airbnb, the $10 billion startup, there are a number of examples of businesses that have been phenomenally successful that still consider themselves startups. I said earlier that startups weren't unfashionable anymore, and many of you might not even think that startups were ever unfashionable because that's just the way that you think, but believe me, post the dot-com crash, startups definitely have been unfashionable in the popular majority, and it's taken a long time to overcome that. Most people thinking that it's not a proper job, and it's taken us a long time to shake, but the banking crisis has really sorted that out, I think. So entrepreneurship is now in vogue. People understand what you now do, and they support it, which I think is awesome. And I think that's a trend that we're going to continue to see for many years to come, where startups be a talent drain on some of the bigger industries and companies. Jonathan Gale, who spoke at this event last time, New Voice Media, just been nominated as one of the top 100 companies to work for in the UK. I think that's awesome. They are a startup. There are just over 100 people, and I think to see them in that list is something that all companies and early stage businesses should strive for. So if we agree that a startup equals growth, then hopefully we can also agree that today's event could be around scaling growth. Which means that we also now need to define the word scaling. Scaling is a bigger and trickier subject, but Wikipedia still agrees with Ben. It even says scalable in its definition of startup. So I summed up by saying we've agreed that to be a startup, you need to grow. We can talk about how fast. And to grow, you need to scale. And grow and scale are close relations of each other. But they're not exactly the same thing, and we'll come on to why scale is a trickier subject. So scaling, for me, is a requirement of growth and also a consequence of growth. You need to do both hand in hand. It's a virtuous loop. Growth is not sustainable without scale, and scale is not sustainable or justifiable without growth. So what is scaling? How do you do it? So hopefully today is going to be all about hearing from your peer group, who will give you really practical examples of that scale, but all I would say is that it's multifaceted. It's about scaling your customers, your funding, your team, your founders, your infrastructure, your engineering, your product, your finance, your press, languages, countries, sales, marketing, offices, systems, process, metrics, and ops, and I'm sure you can think of many more. It is everything that you do. So that's exactly what some of the topics today are designed to address. And when I looked through the agenda, I was delighted to see that so much of it was skewed to two of my favorite subjects, which was team and culture, and systems and processes. All of the speakers today are awesome, but I know two of them very well. Nick Hines, you'll hear from later, from Somo. Nick is, I'll let you tell you his background, but he's built several businesses before. And we've invested in his current business, Somo. And when we did, we reference founders through people that have worked for them and people that have invested in them. And he is phenomenal at building culture because people come back to work for him time and time again at junior and senior levels, and people come back to invest in him time and time again. So he's a great person to talk about that. And systems and processes, you'll hear from Gareth Knight at We Do later. It's another company that we've invested in. And believe me, no one thinks more about systems and processes than Gareth. Is he here yet? Probably not. He's probably somewhere thinking about systems and processes and how to scale his business. So team and culture, systems and processes, you'll hear lots about today. Finally, Ben did ask, so I took the definition of keynote and tried to tee everyone up for what you're going to hear today, but Ben did ask me to bring some experience to bear. And I'm not arrogant enough as an investor to stand here and tell you the same experiences that founders on this stage will do today. But I can give you some observations around what we see in some of the most successful companies that we back, and also some of the companies that we don't back. I think for me, the reason I went to such lengths to define the framework for today in some of the language is so that I can really almost massively oversimplify the observations that I make. So I've created the 3 M's. Apologies for for doing that. I know everyone has their. Saul yesterday had his 3 O's. I've got my 3 M's. But in reality, there's a million different variables that each of you will experience as part of success. And I'm not going to claim to go through to give you 1 or 2 of them that will work for every person. So my observations of success in the companies that we get involved in comes down to the 3 M's, which is management, market, and momentum. And you're going to have to forgive me on the first one. I hate the fact that I've included the word management because it's not a concept that we think about a lot in startups, but actually what I mean by that is team. You might think, what can I do about team? I'm the team, and I'm the founder. There's not much I can do about that. I am what I am. What I would say is the only advice I can give you as founder entrepreneurs is to do everything you possibly can to find, persuade, hire, and retain the very best people you can get your hands on. They will make you look good. They will make you successful, and it's incredibly powerful when you see that come together in an early stage business. As entrepreneurs yourselves, I think the only advice I can give is to be humble, to listen to those around you. I know really, really impressive entrepreneurs who take on personal coaching, which may seem like a bit of a luxury for an early stage business, but it helps them scale as individuals. But also listen to those around you, but then be decisive. You have to make decisions if you're going to be in a high growth environment. So find the very best people, be humble, be decisive. Market. This may seem obvious, but what I really mean by market is a big market. And some of the most successful companies that we work with really have nailed the fact that they're where they are in their market and going after a huge addressable market. Most of you in this room, given that we're not talking about the first million, have already decided the market that you're going after. So it seems slightly counterintuitive to tell you to think about your market. But what I would encourage you to do is think about how you describe the market you're in and how you define the addressable market that you're in, because ultimately everything that you do is persuading employees, investors, customers to go on your journey. And to do that, you have to persuade them that the market you're going after is big enough and interesting enough for all of those stakeholders. So think clearly about how you define your market, go to great lengths to actually come up with data to support your market, And if you think your market's too small, then don't completely change your business. Just think about your positioning in that market and how you might be able to point yourself in a slightly different direction to create a larger addressable market. So that's management and market. I think those are the two where you might argue there's the least that you can influence that you can have, because you've already got your team and you've already got your market, you're already pointed in that direction. So the last one and the most interesting one, which I hope that you get to spend a lot of time on today, is momentum. And again, momentum is a close relation of growth. They're very much intertwined, but I like the word momentum because growth, it can be very single-minded. It can be focused on your financial metrics or your KPIs. Momentum for me is a much broader thing. And it's you can have momentum in everything, and it's incredibly powerful. So when we see businesses that are coming to us and raising capital, you can just tell that they've got momentum in terms of the people they're hiring, the investors they're talking to, the customers they're talking to, the metrics, the KPIs, and all of that, when I see it, is about the way that it's been positioned to me and communicated to me, which is incredibly important. I think what you'll hear from today from other founders is about how you actually drive that momentum. And my singular observation about those who have great momentum in their businesses is that they measure everything. They are absolutely fastidious with their data about measuring everything so that they can work out and what their growth is in each area, what their performance is in each area, and then change course to address for that. So that's my keynote for this morning. Thank you. I told you I wouldn't keep you long. Thank you very much for listening. If you've got any questions, I've got my Twitter handle there. Reach out to me, and we can have a conversation. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Rory.
Oh, sure.
If anyone has any questions for Rory, I've also got Sophie here who's going to help me with microphones in case there's people at the
Come on,
at the
questions.
back.
Tough questions. Don't be scared. No one asked a question on the first
Yeah, there we go.
one yesterday. Be kind, though.
One question we're asked a lot by our employees, which I'll be interested in your perspective on, is why does growth matter? Why should we care about growing? And obviously they come from a position of, we're going to get big and bad, and we're going to lose all the nice kind of fuzziness.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in how you advise people to talk to their employees about the benefits of growth, beyond that for the founders.
I think it's a really good question, and there's definitely two schools of thought. And in terms of the way that you engage your team, and I suspect everyone in this room has a slightly different take on it. And I've seen different examples. So, in some of our companies, every single employee is in the option scheme or the equity, and therefore having a really open dialogue with the team about what you're trying to build and what that looks like as an end result is both powerful, important, and becomes self-fulfilling. I've also seen those who think that bringing people into the option scheme is not what really matters to someone who's a 20K sales exec or an administration person, and what they really care about is some of the other things in their job. So there's some great things written by Daniel Pink. Is it Daniel Pink? Yeah, around autonomy, mastery, and I can't remember the third one, but in terms of what really counts for people at work. And you could argue that options are just overcomplicated and people don't value them. And I've seen very successful businesses where the equity is retained for the senior executives and is not spread more broadly. And those companies have been very successful, and that they've had the same levels of churn in their employee base or lower. So I don't think it's the be all and end all, but clearly the communication and how you bring people into that journey is incredibly important. Ask the same question to Nick Hines later at Somo, because he does a phenomenal job of, he's got nearly 200 people in his organization, but they still do all hands meetings where he tries to bring everyone along with that journey, even to the most newest, most junior person in the team. Good luck with that then.
Okay, any other questions? Great, well, thank you very much, Rory.